A number of years ago, many years ago, I was at a moment in my life when I was at a crossroads. I had to make a decision, or I was in the process of making a decision to change my path. I had been, I think a lot of you already know this, but I had been a Jesuit for 17 years. And I had decided I needed to take a leave of absence to really kind of figure out what was going on in my life. Because one of the things that I had discovered for 10 years prior was that there wasn't a great deal of light in my life. There wasn't a great deal of joy. And now I'm old enough to know that life is not always giggles, right? Life entails a certain amount of struggle and suffering, but always what should be at the bottom is a sense of there's joy even in this. But this wasn't part of what I was feeling, and I wondered what the hell was going on. I had a good friend, a Jesuit at the time, and this is why friends are so absolutely important. So reread Aristotle. He said to me one day, he said, "You're miserable. You've been miserable for as long as I've known you, and those that have known you longer have said you've been just as miserable. At least I'm consistent." He said, "You have to do something about it." And him saying that, in many ways, well, not in many ways, it was a way in which I was allowed to be free. And when I think about that experience, I think about this is what the light of Christ enables us to do. It enables us to be free, to be able to respond in the way that we think God is moving us. So I asked to take a leave of absence. I took the leave, moved out of the Jesuit community, moved into a home, or I rented a room. If anyone is familiar with the novel Great Expectations, I lived in Mrs. Haversham's house. At least some get the literary reference. But what happened to me then, I fell into a really deep, dark depression. It was pretty bad. And one of the things that I remember about that experience is that in my prayer life, because I'm trying to discern, and it's really difficult to discern when everything around you appears to be shrouded in darkness or clouded, etc. There was one overarching theme that was part of this experience. So again, if you're familiar with Hebrew scriptures, if you're familiar with the Exodus story, there's that point when the Jews have left Israel and they're wandering in the desert and things aren't going so well. They start grumbling and they start complaining to Moses, and they start saying to Moses, "Has God brought us out here in the desert just to die?" That was the experience of my prayer. Have you, God, brought me out here just to die? That's a pretty powerful sort of experience that I didn't know what to make of. I had a good spiritual director, which was helping, but there was something else that was really that kind of held me, so to speak, and I couldn't get my head around it. And one of those moments of grace, and I count it as grace, I happened to have been able to get up one day. I walked over to St. Mary's for a particular reason. I don't remember why now. And I ran into a Jesuit. His name was Kevin Gillespie from the Maryland province at the time. And there was something in me, and it certainly wasn't my own energy, because I just didn't have the wherewithal to ask for what I needed. But somehow the words came out of my mouth to Kevin. I said, "Kevin, I'm going through a really difficult time." He was doing a degree in psychology at BU at the time. So I said, I'm really struggling here. There's all this stuff going on. This is what my prayer's life. I can't make heads or tails of it. And he said, all right, I'll put you in touch with somebody. He gave me a name. I called that person. And she was doing her PhD in pastoral counseling. And so I went to see her. And that's when it had been diagnosed, the fact that I had been suffering from depression for over 10 years. And then once the medication was regularized for me, the fog, the darkness began to lift. And I say this because I am absolutely convinced that that happened because of the light of Christ moving in my heart unbeknownst to me. In that, I hope this is true, I think that God took me seriously about wanting to try and really discern authentically how my life should unfold. And that I had placed myself, again, I believe this, I hope this is true, I had placed myself in a situation that Christ's grace was allowed to work. That is, the light kind of came on. And as the fog lifted, this experience of clarity was absolutely amazing. I hadn't felt that clear about life in general for a long time. And so I guess I just want to emphasize the fact that when we talk about the light of Christ, and we talk about what that means in our life, and there's all sorts of meanings. We hope it has to do with, a better kind of cultural life that we live together where we are respectful and we care for others. And hopefully, we sing Christmas carols about peace in the world. But I think from a personal point of view, to think about this little baby as the light of life, the light of grace, the second person of the Trinity, who took on flesh to bring us life, to bring us the light of life, that's a very profound thing to think of. And I like to believe that at least at some level, I kind of got a sense of what that is in my own struggles.